Welcome back to the Be a Man podcast, where we encourage men to be better men. Let's get into it. All right. Welcome. Who are you? Introduce yourself to people.
Yeah, I'm Josh Hatcher, and I'm the founder of Manlihood, which we've got a podcast. Really, it's a movement for men to help men be better men, and it's been a pretty cool experience to be a part of it. So, I mean, that's not the only thing I do. I do a lot of stuff, but that's probably the one I think is probably my calling and probably the most relevant in this setting, I think.
Yeah. I hear you. I love your background, by the way. I think it's cool.
Thanks, man. It's funny because I've got the skulls and I've got a skull on my shirt and I love it. I got a big cow skull.
Oh yeah.
Gave me, and I'm like, people are like, well, skulls are a symbol of death. I'm like, yes, and we're all gonna die, and it's a great reminder that you're gonna die someday, hopefully a long time from now. So don't give me crap about it. We're all gonna die, and it helps me every day when I see my little aquarium skull over there.
Yeah,
that it could happen to me at any moment, and I want to be prepared for it. I want to live my life with that notion.
Definitely.
And I don't know when Christians got so uptight about stuff, dude, but
okay, let's talk about that for a minute, because you're right. And there just seems to be this, I don't know when it happened, but there's been this transition to where Christians are afraid to die. And it's kind of a relatively new thing, I think, because you look, even World War II-ish, that wasn't the case. People knew that they were going to die. But it's ever since maybe the 60s, 70s, it's almost like there's this, even for Christians, this fear of it. And I don't understand completely.
I think there's a fear of them dying, which I think is one thing. And I think when you add to it, there's this fear that we can't associate with the darkness.
Mm.
And I get it. But and I get it. Look, there's real demonic forces out there that are dark, Yeah. And for a long time, we wouldn't let our kids watch Harry Potter or celebrate Halloween, Yeah. Honestly, the thing with Harry Potter is I just hadn't read the book yet, and I didn't want them to I needed to make sure that it was okay. We were the filter. As a parent, your job is to filter.
Definitely.
And we were pretty strict with even TV shows. And part of it was I had a kid that would just do everything that he saw.
Yeah.
And it would totally affect his mood. As an adult, one time we watched Creed 2, and he got so pumped up that he was ready to fight me. And I'm like, dude, you're an adult. Chill, dude. But, so we tried to be that filter. But, dude, there is, you do not, want to have, a relationship with a demon or the devil. Those are evil,
Mm-hmm.
But, I think we're supposed to be a light in the darkness. You're not supposed to be a light in a bunch of other light.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, you got skulls. Just chill, dude. The early church venerated the bones of the saints.
Mm-hmm.
It was nothing to go to a church and to not see, you would see a finger bone or a skull of someone who was martyred for their faith, because it was showing the people, the congregation, that this is something holy, not the bone itself, but this is a martyr who gave his life for Jesus, which is what we all should do. So, yeah, somewhere along the line, people started getting afraid of death, but then they also started getting afraid of the devil. The last time I checked, we win.
It's very true. Yes.
We win. And I'm not going to go around and, have seances, and I'm not going to use a Ouija board. You know what I mean? I'm not going to, go out there and try to conjure up spirits or talk to the dead. No, that's obviously forbidden.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to recognize and fully embrace and understand that death is a victory.
Definitely right.
When I die, now I will say I don't want to die yet. I've got a lot of work left to do.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of work left to do, so I'm not ready.
Yeah. And I think most people would agree with that. We want to live our lives while we're here and make the most of them. We have families and different things, that we're involved in and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like we're wanting it to happen right now, but I'm also not scared of it, if You know what I mean? Like, there has to be a balance there.
Have you ever been close to death?
One time. Yeah. One
Were
time.
you scared?
No, because it happened really fast. So
Yeah.
it was a car accident. So
Oh yeah. Okay.
yeah.
You don't have time to be scared in that moment.
No, I rolled a Explorer. A car pulled out in front of me. I was going like 70 something, and there was nothing I could do. So I hit a ditch and it rolled over, and I was fine. I mean, I walked away with one scratch, and like, it was amazing. I mean, God really was watching over me, but that was probably the closest I've ever been. And it was, I mean, it could have happened if there was another car there. I mean, it definitely could have happened, but yeah, there wasn't a lot of time to be thinking about that. So
a couple years ago, I had a heart attack. And,
okay.
I was at work, and I'm like, they tell you what signs to look for, and you're like, when it happens, you know exactly what it is. Anybody that's like having a panic attack and thinks they're having a heart attack, I'm like, you would know.
Yeah.
If you think you're having a heart attack, you're not having a heart attack. But I was in denial for a little bit. Like, I had that pain in my chest, and then it started on my arm. I'm like, maybe, like maybe I got to poop. Maybe I'll go poop and I'll be fine. And I'm like, nope, that wasn't it. And then I'm like, daggone it, I've got to go to the hospital. So I let my boss know. I'm like, hey, I'm going to go up to the hospital. I'm not feeling good. Something's not right. He's like, are you okay? Do you need me to take him? No, I'm fine. So I drove to the hospital, walked into the ER, and they're like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, yeah, I'm having a heart attack. What? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, could you describe your symptoms? And I'm like, okay, what could you hear is that? And they get me in the bed, and they do all the tests. And I live in a small town, and we are a long way from like a trauma center or a heart center.
Sure.
So they don't have a cardiac lab or any of that. So they're working real hard. My blood pressure is through the roof, and I've got the troponin, I think is the name of it. It's like the enzyme that's released when you're having a heart attack and there's heart damage. So they're like, you're in acute heart damage right now, and I'm like, okay. So then they have me for a little while. Then they send me up to the ICU. They wouldn't let my wife in and they finally, it was during COVID too, which stunk.
Yeah.
So they let her in finally, and she's scared to death. And I'm like, I'm scared, but like, I hate hospitals to begin with. So like, I'm like in that, trying to cope with it mode.
Yeah.
And I'm making jokes. Cause that's how I cope. Sarcasm, making, just the goofiest, stupidest jokes. I'm texting all my buddies to I'm asking all, I have a bunch of guys that, that are good friends, and we're praying together, and I'm sending out the group chat. I'm like, guys, you need to pray for me. I'm having a heart attack right now. And they're like, oh, right. And I just keep making jokes.
Yeah.
And they're like, dude, you need to take this more seriously. Here's the deal. I feel like crap, and I'm scared, and the only thing making me want to live right now is making you laugh, so just deal with it.
Yeah.
I'm the guy in trouble. Let me joke about it. And so then I go up to the heart center. I had to put me in an ambulance, which I think gave me a heart attack just riding in the ambulance on these roads up here, dude. And drove all the way up to Erie, which is, like I said, an hour and a half away. I get in the hospital, and they keep me overnight, and they do a heart cath in the morning, and they get me stable. I'm not, having issues, and they do the heart cath, and they go in there and they look. The doctor says, yeah, I'm not seeing any damage at all.
Wow.
I'm like, well, I'll tell you what, I got a bunch of buddies, and we are praying. And so he's looking over all of the charts and the data and trying to understand why there's not damage, or maybe he's missing where the damage is,
Mm-hmm.
Like, nope, I was healed, dude. Like, that's the answer.
That's amazing.
And I said it out loud, and the nurse is like, amen. And the doctor's like, you could tell he's just rolling his eyes because he's like, whatever. And then a different team of doctors came in to explain it to me, and they're like, well, we think that you had a heart spasm. I was taking, I had a prescription for Adderall for ADHD, and I drank 2 energy drinks that day, and they're like, your heart could have spasmed, and that could have mimicked a heart attack. But I'm like, okay, I can see that could have happened, but does that enzyme ever get released in that case? And they're like, well, I don't think so. So I said, okay, so I can go with the scientific explanation that it wasn't a heart attack, it was a heart spasm that was mimicking a heart attack. Or I could go with the fact that it was a heart attack and I was healed. And they're like, well, science, the body can do amazing things. And I'm like, yep. So can Jesus, and that's what happened. So your story's fine. You can go with that. I'm going to go with mine. It'll be okay.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. That's an amazing story. I
was scared at one point.
Yeah.
Like really scared. I'm like, I'm not ready to go yet. I got people counting on me. There's like 10 podcast episodes scheduled to go out, and I'm not even. I've already warned my family now. Like, if I go, you're going to be hearing messages from me from the grave because I schedule everything way in advance. Yeah. So just deal with it. So don't cancel it. Don't mind to cancel it. That's my wishes, is to let them go out.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing. I mean, I think we're living in a time where we're looking for any excuse not to give credit to Jesus. And it's like in society, and it's rather new, I think, in our culture, because I mean, you trace it back all the way to our founders. There was at least a respect. I don't think all our founders were Christians by any means, but there was a respect, and they had a respect that there was something higher. There was a higher deity that was looking upon us, and they knew that. And it seems like we've gotten to the point now where we're looking for anything else. I mean, science, aliens, you name it. That's what we're wanting to give credit to. I mean, do you know what I mean?
I do. Like, so Christopher Hitchens is like this, massive atheist, like, leader and thought leader in that movement. And, they ask him, like, well, how do you think life got here? And he goes on to talk about this idea that aliens from another dimension or galaxy seeded life on this planet. And I'm like, how is that more scientifically plausible than what I believe? Like the amount of faith it takes to even say that you think that could be what happens is actually more faith than it takes for me to believe this.
Yep.
But and so you go over to another culture where they don't have this emphasis on intellectualism. Like the Enlightenment in Western culture brought great things. Let's not lie. I mean, it completely and it was driven and fueled by Christians. The Enlightenment, that's what fueled it. And scientific advancement and the scientific method was invented during that time. But somewhere along the line, people just started, science doesn't always explain everything, and so they keep trying, and it doesn't. But and then they say, well, there must be a scientific explanation. We just don't know it yet, right? And I'm like, okay, but the problem with intellectualism is you're not the smartest guy in the room, and if you think you are, there's still somebody smarter. Like, it's limited entirely by your capacity to understand something and fathom something in your brain and to put it together and then prove it. Have the knowledge to know how to prove it. Like, man, I know how dumb I am. Like, I don't know. Yeah. I think that's the problem, is our culture is so intellectual. Like, so I mean, I don't know your faith background. I mean, I grew up like old school Baptist.
Sure. So did I.
Yeah. And, I mean, now I'm a Free Methodist with some charismatic leanings a little bit, because I've seen things I can't explain. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I've seen some spiritual things happen. So I'm not like one of those crazy people that blow on you and you pass out and roll around the aisle. Like, that's not me.
Yeah.
And if you're listening and that's you, dude, like, that's fine. I don't mean to insult everybody, but I'm just saying, like, there's probably a little bit more of the supernatural, that I would believe than I think I would have believed growing up Baptist. Theology is not that much different, just a few small little tweaks. But when I take that, coupled with the fact that I was raised in America and schooled in America in this Western mindset that elevates science above all else, like, we have to have an explanation for everything. And when you start seeing things you can't explain, when you start seeing people that shouldn't be alive and they're alive, and you start, you're helping people do something, and you just feel like, I feel like God's telling me to tell you this. And then they turn white as a ghost because the only person that would know that was God and them, things like that. Like, we look at those things like, oh, that's miraculous. And like you go overseas where these people don't have that same Western emphasis on intellectualism. And they're rather, even if they're not Christian, they're raised in a very spiritual world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They have no problem accepting that dead people can come back to life. They have no problem accepting that a miracle can happen when someone gets prayed for. Like, yeah. So I think they see more of it because they have the faith to believe that it could happen. Yeah. And I think our culture is lacking that. And I don't know why we do it. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know why. It's just, it's easier.
Yeah. And I think part of it's from that modernist into postmodern world that we are kind of living in, that there has to be facts. There has to be your truth, my truth, this no God, but there has to be some type of scientific explanation for everything. And I think you're hinting at that as well. And I think that we've almost become too smart for ourselves when we're actually, you could say, maybe dumber, because we have accepted lies that aren't true. I mean, it just isn't. And we've just full on embraced those things instead of saying, yeah, but there may be some things that are actually true and that we can't necessarily explain, but I can still believe it. And it roots back to faith. And we all have faith. We all have faith in something. We would probably define it differently depending on who you're talking to. But, I mean, you have faith that car is going to get you to wherever you're going in the morning, right? We all have faith.
I put all my body weight on this chair that I'm sitting in. You know what I mean? Like trusting that I'm not going to fall to the floor. I mean, that takes a lot of faith. Yeah. Just that it's just that it was simple faith and it didn't take a whole, you know what I mean? Like, well, I've seen it do it before, so why not now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you sit in the chair and it doesn't hold you. So
that's true. Yeah. So I don't know how we even got off on that, but
I don't know, man. I am the king of rabbit holes. So.
That's okay. Well, tell me about your channel. What do you do? What are you hoping to accomplish? All that kind of stuff, so guys know.
Yeah. So, we've been talking about our faith a lot just because, I know that's your heart, where you're coming from. It's my heart,
definitely.
Where I'm coming from. I actually don't talk about it a whole lot on my channel like that. It's definitely not Manlihood is not a Christian website, and that's on purpose, because I figure that whether you're a Muslim or an atheist or there's a lot of guys that are like modern day worshippers of Odin and Thor, Norse pagan or whatever, you know. I'm like, that's a weird religion to kind of.
I've got a guy who dabbled in that a little, and he's going to come on soon. And we're going to talk about that because it's and
I'm not insulting them for believing in something, although a lot of times when you talk to some of them, it's more about the principle. Mm-hmm. So they believe that it's mythology. Mm-hmm. But they take from the principles of those mythologies and okay, that makes more sense than saying you actually believe in Thor and Odin. You know what I mean? Yeah. But anyway, although they might look at me like, well, why do you even believe that? You do. But so, you can be any religion or lack of religion, and you still need to be a better man.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to give a place where we can have the conversations, because I've found in my life, so often we cloister ourselves if we're Christians from everybody else. Mm-hmm. And we're like, well, we're not going to hang out with that guy. He's a Muslim. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, yeah, but how is that Muslim ever going to get to know the Jesus that I know if he doesn't see it in my life? If he only sees it as far away as I keep him pushed away. So I wanted to make sure that what I did with Manlihood was taking the principles that I have learned from my Christian father and the Christian godly men in my life and from the Word of God, and explain those principles to people in a way that they can understand and appreciate, whether or not they believe in the same thing that I do. Because, yes, my heart and my goal is that those men would all come to Christ. That's what I want. And I'm going to tell you what, a lot of them have. A lot of them have. Because we have conversations about how you can be a better man. And then they start doing it and they start to see some improvement, but then they realize they start running into some walls. Like, man, I need some help. I don't know how to get past this. I'm addicted to booze and I can't quit drinking and I don't know what else to do. And I'm like, well, you know, this is what I did when I had something that I was addicted to and I needed to get free from it. Here's my buddies that were drunks and now they're not. Why don't you hang out with them and talk to them? And then you know what? They meet Jesus. You know, and but if they didn't meet Jesus, they'd still be welcome. You know, that's kind of my thing. And all of this was kind of born out of I was a youth pastor for a long time.
Okay, cool.
And, you know, when you move on and you go to a different town or whatever, you still try to stay in touch with all those kids that are now adults because you care about them, you know, and I always kind of still see myself as their big brother. And, you know, a few years after I was their youth leader, they started dying of drug overdoses, going to prison for sexually abusing children or beating their wives or, you know, whatever. And I'm like, I felt like I had failed them, you know, like you guys. And when I look back, like, if I look back, I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe I did see all these things coming, you know, I really think about it. But I just recognized and understood that these men are suffering from not having good male role models in their life. And while I was a role model for a little while, that was 4 years of their life. And now here they are and they don't have me. They don't have somebody in their life. And I wanted to start at the same time, concurrently with that, I kind of came to a place in my life where I had made a mess of things. You know, my sweet Sunday school teacher wife at the time, she's a pastor now, which could totally open up a whole conversation that we probably don't want to get into because then we'll get nasty grams, you know, we'll get nasty emails. There's no such thing. Shut up. Anyway, we won't get into all that. But my sweet Sunday school teacher at the time of a wife comes upstairs and says, I promised you I'd love with you and stay with you forever, but did you have to make it so damn hard? And when she says the D word, you know, man, like it's business. Bad. And so, you know, it was right around all that same time. And I'm like, okay, I'm failing my guys, you know, because they needed me and I'm not even in their life anymore. And what kind of man am I to even lead them if I can't even, you know, do this right? And so I just kind of went on a journey myself to try to become a better man and said, okay, guys, let's do this together. You know, and that's where it started from. And, you know, it started as a blog because I was in radio at 14 years old. Like that was my first job. So I always knew that I wanted there to be a podcast. You know, I used to do video editing with my uncle's VHS camera and the VCR, and you'd like play a little bit of a tape and we'd like stop motion video. So I'm like, I can do video, I can do audio. Awesome. And I had no idea what I was getting into, but I figured it out. And took a little while before we got it where we wanted it to be, but it's been, I mean, this summer will be 10 years. So it's awesome. Been pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you hint on something there that I wonder if you'll go deeper into, but you said there's like a community of guys, you know, that you were texting when you were experienced the heart attack and all that. How valuable is a community of guys to men?
So, dude, this conversation we could talk about this for 2 hours because this right now, dude, like I created Manlihood. Yes. Cause my mom told me when I was a little kid, if you can find a job where you can talk for a living, you're going to be a success. So I knew that was the thing. But I also know that the only time that my life has ever gotten better was when there was a group of guys around me who were challenging me and encouraging me to do the right thing. And so like, I knew that that's what needed to happen, what we needed to start to develop, and to be able to encourage men to have the conversations they need to have and encourage that. And, so, you know, we have a community online, which is helpful. It's still not that flesh and blood. Like those guys that I was texting about what I was going through when I was having my heart attack or whenever anything else happens. These are the guys that I see at least once a week. You know, I've got I would call it, most people would call it a small group, right? Or a cell group or a growth group. But there's been a shift in our church recently where we've stopped calling it that, and we've started calling it, using the word micro church just because it makes sense, but it's really not a micro church. It's a church. It's what it is. It's a church of guys who meet in a building downtown or around a campfire or in somebody's backyard every week. And we talk a little bit about what we read in the Bible sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just talk about what's going on in our lives. And I'm going to tell you what, like, if I didn't have that, I'm a mess, you know, and I know they need it and I need it. And it's funny because I'm the leader of this group, but, you know, like, all that means is that I'm available, you know, and then I make sure that we have a place to meet. And, you know, if there's a decision to be made that they don't want to make together, I'll make it. But that the group is the strength of it. And those relationships, the times in my life that I was not in that kind of community, in that kind of connection with people, or like maybe I was in a group and the group kind of fell apart and we moved on, that's when I was doing bad stuff. You know, if I don't have guys I can look in the eyes and they can say, how you doing, man? And if I have to be able to say something other than, oh, fine, I'm fine. Because 99% of the time you're not fine.
No.
And like, I want them to be able to ask me more. I want them to be able to say, Josh, dude, are you still like, you know, binge eating candy bars and energy drinks and eating crap? And are you working out and doing what you need to do? How'd you do on that this week? You know, I need guys that can say, hey man, last week you said that you and your wife were having some issues. Did you work on that? Like, have you guys worked that out? Like, if you don't have that, you're suffering. And I know that every time I have this conversation online or we say something, I'm telling you, I've had more people in the past several months reach out to me and just say, dude, like, how do we make this happen? Like, I live in such and such a place and I don't have any friends. I don't have any guys to get together. And so that was something that God started working on me in, is that I need to teach people how to do that. So I'm kind of working now with going through a cohort where we're learning how to train people how to start these kinds of groups. And I want to kind of, it's not man specific, but I want to find out some ways to make it man specific. And then, then maybe start teaching people how to do that, because I get asked it all the time. Like, we're having this conversation right now. I'm going to get asked it all the time. Yeah. And I guarantee you, I'll be getting emails after this conversation and they'll say, how do I do that? Yeah. As I always do. So,
you don't have to go into it fully, but what's the first step? Like, guys.
The first step is to find guys that you have something in common with, you know, and, you know, if you are a Christian, I'm assuming that, you know, based off of what I've seen from the BMAN podcast, that a lot of the listeners probably would classify themselves as that. If not, they're interested in it enough to be able to tune in. So we've got that. Let's start there. So let's say you're a Christian and you know that's what you need. Like, you should have more than one man at your church, you know, and, you know, maybe your church doesn't have an official men's ministry. So start one. And if your church isn't empowering you to start one, then and won't empower you to start one, then just do it on your own anyway. Because, you know, just say, look, all right, I am going to make a commitment, and I'm going to say every Monday night I'm going to invite people to my house, and we're going to have, you know, grab a Little Caesar's pizza, you know, or two of them. You know, or I'll throw some food in the crock pot. You don't have to have food, but you can. We don't always have food at our group when we meet, but
it's more fun when you do.
It is. But, you know, start it out with that, you know, and then just invite people. And you know what? If you have one guy show up, then you hang out with that guy. You get to know each other. And you make some covenants, right? Some deep promises. And you say, everything that we talk about when we're getting together today, it stays in this group. And we don't talk about it anywhere else. It's a safe place, and if we do, you're gonna get the crap beat out of you. So don't repeat it. And you know, you make that covenant first. You make the second covenant that, look, we're not going to judge you if you can't make it one week, but please make it a priority. And all of you that are coming, or if it's 2 of you, if it's 3 of you, if it's 12 of you, make it a priority as much as you can. And if you're coming, there's one guy in our group that can probably make it, maybe every other week or once a month, and he's involved in a lot of stuff, and he's got little kids, and he's working 2 jobs. I don't feel bad if he can only make it once a month.
Yeah.
But I know that when he can make it, he makes it a priority to make sure that he does. And that makes a big difference for him. And it makes a big difference for us, because this guy is like really a really good influence on all of us. You know what I mean? He gives us really good information, and he holds us accountable. And he's actually only been a Christian for a couple years. But he started coming, and he's like, dude, I don't like reading the Bible. I've never understood it. Like, it's because you never really read the Bible, dude. Like, you just had people tell you to read it, and then you picked up a translation you didn't understand, and then you complained that you didn't get it. Yeah. So let's read this together. And then we read a book together, and we talked about it. And then, dude, the guy knows the Bible so well now, just from 2 years of reading a little bit every day, and then having somebody to talk about. Because that's the thing, dude, like the Bible. And doing this thing, step 2, I'm going to tell you what step 2 is not. Preparing a Bible study. Dude, you don't need to prepare a Bible study. If you want to learn how to do a Bible study that works in this setting that's perfect, look up the Discovery Bible Study Method. Yeah. Because it's basically, and you don't even have to do it as much as that says. So like that's like a guide if you can't find out what to talk about. Yeah. Like, just say, guys, this week we're going to read, we have 7, this is what we do in our group. We're like, we have 7 days in the week before we're going to meet again. So why don't we just assume that 2 of those days you're going to be too busy to read, because it happens. So we're going to read 5 chapters. So we're going to read Acts 1 through 5. And when we get together, we'll just holler if anything jumped out at you. Or if you have a question during the week, text the group chat and let us know what your question is. Or let's talk. So we try to kind of keep the conversation going. And then when we get together, we're like, all right, so how'd it go? And one guy's like, hey, it said this. What is that tongue of fire he's talking about in Acts? Or what does it mean, the mighty rushing wind? Like, what are they talking about? Or like, what is Solomon's porch? What is that all about? And then somebody in the group has an answer to that question. Or sometimes, this was a great one. I don't remember what it was, but we were reading something recently, and there was a question that one guy asked, and none of us knew. We had never read it before, or we've all read it before, or a lot of us had read it before, but none of us had ever really thought about that question before. And we're like, I don't know, but we're gonna find out, and we'll find out before next week. Well, now we've got guys in the group that are really good with Google, and so so like we did that the last time that happened. The guy's like, oh wait, no, I got it, and then he reads it. We're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I just think there's a lot of guys who are timid to open up about things, and they are nervous about the honestly, you said small town. I am in a small rural town too, and I think word can spread really fast. Not
if the threat of getting beat up is in.
Well, yes, and that's the key, I think. But it's hard for guys to take that first step and really commit to it, because for a lot of them, they've never done anything like it before.
So what happens when one of them does take the first step and opens up and shares what he's going through? Sure you've been, once one guy does, it's like a floodgate, because everybody is just waiting to talk about what they're struggling with. Yeah. And it sounds like it's all about talking about what we're struggling with. Dude, it's only that much of it. Half the time we're busting each other's chops and teasing each other and laughing and telling stupid jokes and having a good time. Yeah. And then we have the goof off time, or then we have the serious time, and it all mixes together. And the longer that you meet, like we used to do at our church, we used to have our groups were like semester based, because I don't know, some excellent, beautiful, wonderful church growth specialist somewhere told us that, it works better if there's that stress and release. And I get it. There's actually benefits to having a semester base, and then you start another group, so that you don't become inward focused, you don't become cliquish. I understand that. Yeah. But I also know that having been doing this for this particular group that I'm in right now for over a year now, like there's growth that has happened that wouldn't happen if we had, disbanded for the summer. Yeah. If we had disbanded for the summer, we wouldn't be at this place.
Yeah.
I know because I've led 100 of those groups, you know,
Yeah.
where we did like 6 months or 3 months and then we were off, and then you start over.
Yeah.
Like, we've been going a while now, and now we're like, you know, we know each other. Dude, that's the thing, it's about consistency, because if you start this and you're not consistent with it and you don't stick with it, then it's just, I tried that, it didn't work. Like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you tried it, really? Did you try it, or did you like taste it? Like, it's like my kids, like, you know, I ate 2 bites of it. Yeah, okay, that's not enough to know whether you like it or not, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point. I mean, and I think building off of that community, but what are some other areas that men should really be focusing on to grow and become better men? Because that's my goal here, and I know everybody comes at it we're all kind of saying some of the similar things, but everyone comes at it at a different angle.
So, first of all, that's okay that it's coming from a different angle.
Definitely.
You know, I give this analogy a lot. People are probably tired of hearing it, but maybe this is a new audience that haven't heard it yet. I want you to think of Mr. Rogers and Mr. T. I mean, these guys have so much in common, right? Their both the first name is Mr. You know, they both loved children and children's television. They both loved their mamas and they loved Jesus. And, you know, but they're very different.
Yeah.
You know, they had the same mission that drove them, but they look and acted and operated very different. And, you know, I think we have to be okay with the fact that what we're not looking for is a homogenous man culture where all men are wearing buffalo plaid and, you know, flat-brimmed caps and bearded and, you know, like, you know, with axes on their t-shirts, you know, like it's okay, dude. If we're different, like we should be different. And, you know, like somewhere along the line, like I don't even know who came up with this idea, but there's this idea of masculine energy and feminine energy, and and you have both within you. No, that's baloney. Yeah. If you're a man, you're a man. And if you have a higher voice and if your wrist is a little bit limper, right? That doesn't make you less of a man.
No.
It doesn't mean you're not a man. You know, if you prefer to wear, you know, designer clothes and get your hair cut, or if you just smell like you rolled out of the sleeping bag by the campfire and you look like it too, you know, you're still a man.
Yeah.
And masculinity can express itself in different ways. And we have to get out of our heads that it's going to be expressed the same by everybody, because that's just baloney. It's not. It's going to look different from one person to the next. And I think that's part of the problem, is that we were like, oh, well, this guy's more feminine because he cries a lot more and he's more gentle. Like, no, he just cries a little bit more and he's more gentle. You know, like his voice is a little higher. He's not more manly than the guy that, you know, is all hairy and has a deep voice and can lift 800 pounds. You know, that doesn't make him more manly.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing we have to get out of our heads. And I know we were going somewhere with all that, but my ADHD is kicking in. So where do we start that?
What are some ways that some things they can focus on? You know what I mean? We're focused on growing as men.
Yeah. So the first thing we have to do is, recognize it. We're all coming from different places and we all look a little different. And, you know, if your group of guys is all successful businessmen and you don't have a recovering addict or a guy with autism in your circle, you need to expand your circle. You know, that diversity is important and it matters. I preferred to chase after successful men for a long time. You know, I want to be like these businessmen that do these things. And I'm like, dude, like, I'm learning from the guy in my Bible study who's autistic, who is like applying every bit of autism, which is his superpower, to studying the Bible right now, you know? And he's like he does these cross-reference chains, and he's got this notebook and he writes as small as humanly possible to track every cross-reference in the Bible. Huh. Like if we read a scripture in group, he goes home and he looks up all the cross-references and then like gets a deeper understanding of it, you know?
Cool. Yeah, that's cool.
And like I'm learning from him. And before, it was difficult for me to learn from him. And so, like, I think that some of the ways that we as men can mature is to stop being so judgmental of people, you know, like accept people, just embrace people and love them. You know, you want to become a better man. Like, I'm going to say the most important thing you can do is learn to love people. And especially if you can love people like Jesus did, which wasn't always gentle, wasn't always super kind in the way that we see kind. Sometimes he called things out, but he loved people. But, you know, aside from just the spiritual end of things, you know, if we want to grow as a man, you need to become better at what you do. And, you know, if you think you can't read very well, learn to read better. You're going to learn a lot. You know, there are plenty of resources out there to help you read better. You know, maybe even listening to audiobooks or finding ways to learn things. You know, if you're not taking the time to learn and invest in your success and growth as a person, then you're not going to grow. You're going to stagnate.
It's true.
And, you know, so listen to podcasts, you know, read books, go to the seminars or webinars if you can, if you want to. Find something that's going to help you, that, you know, that moves you forward in your life. And I think the other thing that we have to remember as men is how much, like, personal responsibility matters. Because nobody's going to do this for you. Nobody can do it for you. And if you think about your life, you know, we all love to blame somebody for our problems. You know, it's easy to look and blame, you know, Joe Biden or Donald Trump or whoever, you know, or blame your boss or your wife for everything that's going wrong in your life. And maybe they do have something to do with it. But you're the only one that you can control.
Yep.
You're the only one that can make a difference in your situation. And the only one that you can count on. and if you get to the place where you can't fix it and you've done everything that you can do, then you stand firm, you know? But I think that so often, you know, I struggle with this sometimes. Like, it's easy for me to fall into that victim mentality, or that it's everybody else's fault, or look at what these, you know, the man is pushing me down. Because tell you what, you know, you start looking at the economy and you start looking at how much everybody wants to take from you, you know, and you're like, man, every time I start to succeed, I move up a tax bracket, you know? Yeah. And, you know, or every time that something starts going good, then stuff starts breaking down. Like, well, guess what? Who's going to fix that? Nobody else is going to fix that or change that. I'm the one that has to make adjustments if I want my life to be better. Yeah.
That's good. That's really good. I'm smiling. Did you ever watch Parks and Rec?
I love Parks and Rec.
So the episode where, you know, Ron Swanson's teaching the little girl how taxes work, and he starts eating the sandwich. It's one of my favorite episodes. Like,
Ron Swanson is one of my personal heroes. So.
Like, that's exactly how I feel a lot of times. And you're exactly right. I was just talking about this with somebody else the other night, is we've gotten into this victim culture where it's almost like there's no personal. I was talking about Little League with somebody. Not everyone should get a trophy type person, because if you don't put in the work, I understand. I'm not heartless. You know, I run our Little League program, but I want to encourage them to put forth work as they're, you know, participating and enjoying it. And because personally, I think they will get more out of it if they put in the work that they need to earn the victory. And I think
everybody gets a little trophy, but then the ones who put in the work get the big trophy.
Yeah, there you go.
Everybody gets an ice cream.
I always do every year. You hit a home run, and it could be an inside the park, whatever, or you catch a fly ball, and I'm working with little ones, so you get an ice cream token to a ice cream shop we have here in town. So that's something I do, just kind of, you know, to raise the level, raise the expectations, because I think for far too long, and it goes back to that saying, we're living weak times create, you know, strong men, and this story goes on, good times create weak men. You know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And we're living in that weak men time, but I think times are changing, and we are going to start seeing strong men rise again, but that won't happen if we don't step up and start teaching younger people how to take responsibility, own their mistakes, stop blame shifting everyone else for your problems, and do something about it. Just like you're saying right here.
I think that I think about this a lot too. Like, you look at everything that's wrong with the world, that's wrong with our country, that's wrong with our culture, whatever. And I've come to the place where, like, there's two schools of thought, especially in Christendom, right? You've got the one that's like, Jesus, come back and take us. We're ready to go home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm reading in Peter that the reason he hasn't come back yet is to give as many as possible a chance to repent, right?
Yeah.
Because he's not slow in coming back, right? You remember that verse? And so that means that I don't want him to come back. I want him to take his time so that the people that I love that don't know him have a chance.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to pray, Jesus, come back and take me, right?
Yeah.
I know it's this little rabbit trail. Like I said, I'm the king of those. But this thought and this idea that, we have to take responsibility and make a difference and try to change things. What we have to get and recognize is that it's up to us and we won't see the fruit of it. We're going to die and the world's still going to be a mess. But maybe we make a difference in the lives of our kids and in their kids and in their kids. I mean, I have that next generation down now. I've got grandkids. So I'm like, I get to invest in grandkids now, and it's the best. Like, their generation is going to be different. They're the ones that I think that's the problem we have, is that we don't understand that. And I don't know when it was. I think, well, really, let's be honest. What we're facing right now is generations before us decided the world needed to change, and they were very upset and did a lot of protesting and a lot of doing what they could to change the culture. And maybe even some of those things were motivated by the right things, right? But the way that they did it has left a mess. And it's not their mess that they're dealing with. It's the mess we're dealing with. And my hope is that at least in my line, and in my ripples that stretch out, that what's happening is they see a better way to live. They see that life can be more and it can be important. And the only way that happens if I set the example. I have to be different than the world around me. And sometimes I am, and sometimes I'm not. So I'm trying real hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a fine line that we walk, and it's hard to make those decisions that will. You don't want to be. I say weird. I hope you know what I mean by that. Like
weird is
like an
weird.
Awkward. Yeah, like awkward. Like you can be a Christian and not be like super awkward about it, and still build relationships with others.
You don't have to knock on doors and wear specific kinds of clothes. And,
yes.
Or
Yeah.
Or make everybody feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to make people feel uncomfortable, but like I said, I think it goes back to what we said earlier. The first thing a man's got to do if he wants to make a difference in the world is to love people.
Yeah.
Because, like, especially when it comes to like spreading the gospel, right? Being a Christian in the world, like, somewhere along the lines, we got the idea that our job is to convert people. Their job is to change people. And our job is to preach the gospel and to make disciples. And God's the one that does the changing.
Definitely.
And so I'm just going to tell the good news. And it should be good news. It shouldn't sound like bad news. I don't know where that came from. Like a lot of times people spread the gospel and it sounds like bad news.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to be preaching the good news and we need to be making disciples. And that's pretty simple. That's the Great Commission. And the Great Commandment is to love God and love people.
Yep.
Love your neighbor as yourself. Like, that's really simple. That's the heart of it. Just do that.
It's really
Don't
good.
worry about filling up your pews. Don't worry about, don't worry about your offering plate, and don't worry about whether you beat last year's attendance record and don't worry about the color of the carpet. Just like love people.
Yeah.
And that's not as hard as you would think. Now, it isn't easy either. There's sometimes when it's hard and it's messy.
Some are more lovable than others.
but that's the heart of it, man.
Yeah, it is.
See them the way God sees them and love people that way. And I think that's really what it all comes back to. Like, we can try as hard as we can to say, well, we're just going to change things, and I can't believe those nasty Democrats. Okay, yeah. All right, that's fine. We get on the political side of things. Yes, I am very conservative. Yeah. I am. I'm very conservative. Unless it's about X or Y or Z, I'm going to have a couple blue or purple spots.
Yeah.
Just like if you really sit down and you talk to that nasty liberal neighbor of yours that has the blue sign in his front yard and you talk about the issues, you find out that he's actually a Republican that thinks he's a Democrat. We're like, stop playing into all the division and stop making a mess and just love people.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. Like, I feel like social media has brought amazing things like this conversation, right? It's brought amazing things into the world. And then it's also brought out the stupidest things in the world. And it's used to play us like a fiddle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, let's get everybody upset about this today.
Yeah. So, are you in Pennsylvania? I hear you say Erie. Okay.
Yeah. So, if this might be backwards, but if this is a map of Pennsylvania, or this, depending on how it shows up on the screen. But if this is a map of Pennsylvania, I'm like right there.
Okay.
And we're in the middle of the Allegheny National Forest. We are.
Oh, okay.
Like, there's nothing around. The city that I live in, the small city, is like 8,000 people, and it's the home of Zippo lighters and Case knives. They're made right here in Bradford, PA. And Microtech knives too.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, how did you brought up politics, and we don't have to get into it a lot, but how did John Fetterman get voted back in, or how did he get elected?
Well, I'm not sure how the Nephilim was elected, but I will say
the guy can't make a complete sentence.
And
I'm not an Oz fan, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, that's why he won, because somebody got the bright idea. Well, they elected a reality star once, maybe it'll work. No, Oz. I'm not a big Oz fan either.
No,
right? The problem is he's not a Pennsylvanian.
Yeah,
he's a New Jerseyan. In Pennsylvania, people don't like New Jerseyans. And the other end of it, we go too long and I could give you my real theories on how he won. And then, then I'm going to get the FBI knocking on my door.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you think something different than what they want you to think. That's what happens.
Then we get censored here.
Right. I don't know. I will say this, Fetterman. Well, first of all, if you look at how the counties vote, right, it's red.
Yeah.
And the cities vote blue.
Yeah.
And it's that way across the entire country. Like, if you look at the election map by county, what you see is that we don't have red states and blue states. We have blue cities and red everything else.
Yeah.
That is, and that's not, it's two completely different lifestyles and mindsets, Yeah. And I personally, like I said, I'm very conservative on most things, but I can't fathom or understand why people think the way they do. But I also never, I lived in Lynchburg, Virginia for a little while, but it wasn't exactly like inner city. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know or understand how or why people who live in the city think. I can't get it, just like they can't get me. Yeah. So, but there's more people there. It's more population dense than it is where I live. So it's, when you factor it out, it's about 50-50 for the whole country. And so you got these little bitty cities full of a lot of people, and they all vote one way. And you got these great big swaths of country with very few people spread out, and they vote one way. Yeah. And it's been that way for years.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in Illinois, so it's very similar. Everybody just thinks about Chicago when they think of Illinois, but most
pig farms are Illinois. Pig farms are Chicago. That's it.
Yeah,
pig farms are pig farms in a big city.
Yeah, it's like 92% farmland in Illinois, And if you look at a map, it's like completely red, except for Chicago and maybe a few little cities or bigger cities in Illinois. And it just there's actually a real movement to separate the state.
Yeah, there's been talks about that in New York because, like I said, I'm just over the border from New York.
Yeah.
And so New York is the exact same way, and they've been talking about wanting to separate the New York City from the rest of the state. And, I mean, it'll never happen, but
No.
you know, I don't know. I had this really interesting theory the other day. First of all, like I said, I'm conservative, and I may vote conservative, but I'm not voting by party. I'm trying to vote on the issues, right?
Yeah.
That I feel that I feel matter. And they never give me a candidate that actually represents me, except for like my local congressman, like state congressman in the state house. Like that dude like gets it. And I actually talked to him. I'm like, dude, like you're the only candidate that I ever vote for that I don't feel cheap about. I always feel like I don't like this guy, but I have to vote for him. So like, why don't we get you to let's form a leadership program and have you teach the next generation how to serve their community the way that you do. So that we can teach the next generation of politicians how to behave and how to act and how to be a good man in that position. Like I'm telling you what, like if you run into red tape or blue tape, right? You run into something that isn't working right with the state government here in Pennsylvania, which happens all the time. You know, COVID hit, you get laid off, so you get to file for unemployment so that until your job is going to hire you back again, which happened to a lot of us. The system gets overwhelmed and you can't get through to anybody, you know? And I'd call my state congressman and he would take care of business and get it taken care of, you know, or there's something where somebody in the government's supposed to do X, Y, and Z and they're not doing it. You call him and he says, let me take care of it. And then he takes care of it. And he doesn't care whether you're Democrat or Republican. You are in his constituency and his job is to make sure the government works, you know? And he, you know, his job is to represent the people. So like I said, like we all might have, we maybe all red with a couple blue spots. Well, maybe that blue spot is an issue that affects my community, you know? And so I call him and he might be all red, but he recognizes that this issue is going to affect my community, you know? And even though I might not, you know, it might be an issue that tends to be a Democratic issue, the Republican side of me is like, I think we still need to do this because it takes care of the people that need the help, you know? And you let him know, and then he votes to represent the people, not to represent his interest or the interest of whoever donated to his campaign.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'd vote. I think I'm just, from now on, I'm just going to write him into every office.
Yeah.
My son called me. I won't say which son. Maybe that'll help. My son called me and he's like, hey, I didn't really want to vote for Oz or Fetterman, so I wrote you in.
Hey, you got one right in.
Was written in at least one vote for Senate.
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. I just, there's, every time I listen to that guy, I just don't understand at all, like, what someone's thinking.
I am convinced. Like, how old are you, man?
37.
Okay, so you're old enough. Did you ever watch the old G.I. Joe cartoon?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You remember, like, something would be going on, and then somebody would, like, you know, some politician or somebody would be doing something. They rip off the rubber mask, and you see that it's, like, really Destro or Cobra Commander or something. Yeah. I'm like, that's what's happening right now. We're in an episode of G.I. Joe, and we're just waiting for the rubber masks to all be ripped off and realize they're all lizard people or whatever.
Reptilians.
And, like whatever's happening doesn't make any sense. I mean, across the board. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I am convinced that I don't know. I mean, I'm not like a full-on conspiracy theorist, but I'm a conspiracy theory enthusiast, if that makes sense.
Same.
Like, I find them interesting. So, and I think that there's a reason somebody believes it, right?
Yeah. Well, in the last few years, a lot of those so-called conspiracies have come true.
Right.
I'm like,
right. Well, all I know is like, this is probably going to get your show censored, but all I know is you don't have to go too far to see what the government has actually admitted to doing in the past. Right? You can go on the FBI vault and the CIA vault and read declassified documents. You can read newspaper articles. And you can read court transcripts that are all public information from back from the 50s through the 80s. And you can see things that they've admitted to doing.
Mm-hmm.
And just that is enough to make you not trust anything that they're saying. Just the things that they admitted to doing back then. So, when I look at what's going on now, I'm like, it's all, none of it makes any sense.
Yeah.
So, I get it. I'm not.
Yeah.
And that's where I keep having to remind myself of this. And my wife does a really good job at reminding me of this. It's like, yes, you're an American, but you belong to the kingdom of God,
Yeah.
And like, I'm reminded of the cry of the Revolutionary War patriots who would say, no king but Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's almost like, this almost sounds like a Plato or an Aristotle or Socrates kind of principle or philosophy, but it's almost like I have to separate myself sometimes from the things of the world that are happening and recognize that that is all illusion.
Yeah.
Because who I am and what I do and what I can control has nothing to do with any of those things. Like, and who I serve is so far above those things.
Yeah.
And so, like, dude, COVID did a number on all men. I was talking to my wife about it today. Like, especially like men in the church. I think we all just kind of like that first couple years, like, just shut down, like, became completely ineffective because we, like, how am I supposed to be a man who protects and provides and presides when all of this is going on around me and I can do nothing about it?
Mm-hmm.
And so men just checked out for a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
Not completely, but quite a bit. They're like, I don't know what to do about this. Like, inside, a whole bunch of us were ready to go and like tar and feather and pitchfork and take things over, but also knowing it wasn't the right time to do that or the right reasons, but we just knew that it didn't work. Something had to change and we couldn't understand it. And I think now we're at the place where we're starting to rise up in a better way, where we recognize and understand that, like, what God's kingdom is about is bigger and better and bolder than anything we're dealing with here,
Yeah.
Like, so what? They throw you in jail. They throw me in jail and I get to preach to the prisoners.
Yeah. You have a prison ministry.
Like, they take away everything.
Yeah.
Okay, I literally know the God who has provided when I had nothing before.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm starting to try to, and I say it like it's easy because it's not.
No.
It's not when you get your paycheck and you're like, I can't buy groceries with this right now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's people nervous now that I've never heard be nervous before. Because of the inflation and different things going on, where it's starting to hit them, and it's never hit them before, but they're starting to feel it now. And there's a little bit of I don't want to say a panic, but you can see that there's concern about what's happening. And I think it's things like this that are causing guys like you, guys like me, others to start being the change, to start leading guys out of the mundane, like, matrix that it feels like we're all in. And we're starting to see that there's a path forward, but we're going to have to clear the way, clear the path. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it has a lot less to do. I love the word matrix and that concept. I did a podcast episode actually called Are We Living in a Simulation? And talked about some of this stuff. Just because, I don't think we're living in a matrix or a simulation, literally, but I do think that there's a little bit of that happening metaphorically. And I think that the way out of it is literally just like, so what? What can they do to me?
Yeah.
If God is for me, who can be against me? And we just need to step up and just do what we're supposed to do. And not be afraid of whatever consequences come with that. Now, it means that we have to do the right thing, but it's all nuts, man. It's all nuts. And I found that I think that the key is, like I said, just loving people around you. You know, like we get so worried about these guys in Washington. What can they do?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what can they really do? And what can you do? Because what you can do, sure, you can vote, and if they count it, then you did what you could. You know,
yeah.
You can make your voice heard, but none of that has anything to do with your neighbor that needs some help today. None of that has anything to do with your wife or your children or your grandchildren. You know,
definitely.
Like, dude, like around 2016, when like the last time that the political nonsense was all fueled up like crazy,
mm-hmm.
I remember like getting really sick of it, and like all my friends were getting, you know, all mad at each other all the time, and I was just overwhelmed with it. And this crazy hippie Jesus dude was like, "Hey man, just plant your garden, man, and grow your garden, and take care of your family, and love your neighbor, and worry about that stuff." And it was like this, like, profound statement that was made so simply that I'm like, yeah, it makes so much sense right now. And so I started doing that. Like I've always been a news junkie because, like I said, my first job was on the radio when I was a kid. So I've always been a news junkie. I've been a news anchor, and, you know, like journalism was a part of my life. And so it was hard for me to cut the cord a little bit and to like turn off the radio and start listening to podcasts when I'm driving, you know, because I would drive home and I'd listen to NPR. And I love NPR because they produce it well, even though that they're going to be slanted one side. You do hear stories that you don't hear elsewhere, you know, and it's produced well and it's interesting. But gosh darn it, they always bring in the constant stream of people with one side and one perspective, and they say things, and I'd drive home and I'd get so mad, and I'd be ready to walk in the door, and then I would be mad about something that had nothing to do with what mattered because I was upset about something that didn't matter. You know, I'd be upset, you know, now you're serving me this for dinner, or now we've got this problem and that problem, because it just put me in a bad mood. Shut off. If you need to read your headlines in the morning, read your headlines in the morning, but don't waste your time obsessing over it. I couldn't. It destroyed me. So
yeah, that's a good reminder for all of us, I think, is that, you know, sometimes we do got to cut it off. I found myself lately cutting it off just because it can just become so much. You get so discouraged by things, and it's not healthy for you, for one thing. But then there's so many other things you could be doing for your family and for those around you that truly need you, that you could truly make a difference in. And that's really, I think, part of what you're getting at is, don't have your eyes so set on those things that are out there that you have no control really over, but focus more on what you can. And that's your family, your friends.
Write your own news story.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
Write your own news story.
Yeah.
And you know, little Bobby hit a home run tonight. You know, news at 11. You know, like let that be your headline. You know, like
that's awesome. Yeah, that's really good. Hey, Josh, I don't want to keep you all night, but man, where can people find you at if they want to go ask you a question or reach out or whatever? You know.
Yeah. So if you go to manlihood.com, you can connect with our stuff that we're doing there. You can find a link to our private Facebook group, the Manlihood Man Cave. We'd love to have you there, and you can interact with the guys there. We talk about all kinds of stuff. And if you want to listen to the podcast, it's on all the podcast platforms, or you can do it directly at the website. And then, you know, there's a YouTube channel as well. So wherever you want to, active on social media as Manlihood. And,
awesome.
You know, so connect with us. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I'll put all that in the description and all those cool things. But I like to end each, you know, video with a challenge. Give the guys out there some kind of challenge, either for this week, maybe it's for 2023, maybe it's for the holidays. What's a good challenge for guys?
Take some time to write out your purpose statement, your mission statement, your vision statement, and your core values. PVMV. And it might take more than a week, you know, that might be a month-long process. It was about a month for me, but write it out and take some time to think about what they mean. If you need some help with that, get in touch with me. I'll get you some resources to help you. But I think if you take the time to really understand who you are, what you're here to do, what your long-term goals are, and what things you value that are your guiding principles for your life, it's really going to matter, because then when someone asks you to do something, that's not really important to me, because I know what's important to me. It's also going to help you when you do come across something that's the right thing to do, that it's right because it resonates with these things, because you've taken the time to identify them. And I think a lot of guys will just live their life and kind of let life dictate what they do. But I think when you take the time to identify who you are, what you stand for, and what you're here to do, I think it's going to make a big difference for you. So like I said, if you need help with that, I'd gladly send you to some resources and see if we can help you write that down. But that's my challenge, is to take some time to write that out.
That's good. That's really good. I appreciate you saying that and challenging guys on that. Yeah.
When you do have somebody that knows you well enough, like, share it with them. Say, hey, does this describe me? And
that's when it gets hard.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it doesn't matter.
And helpful.
Sometimes, like, I don't get this. This is stupid. But or no, that's not you at all. But it might actually help you make sense of it. Just to have a friend say, yeah, that does describe who you are.
Yeah. That's really good. I appreciate that challenge, and I think guys are going to be encouraged by it. I think guys are going to be encouraged by this whole conversation, because you have kind of given some challenges all throughout, because, just loving others, not getting so caught up in the media stuff, finding community, all those things I think are going to be super encouraging to men. And I think one thing I've noticed about this is that it's encouraging to know that there's other guys going through the battle with you, and we're here. Like, we're going on this path. You're not alone out there. We're on this path together, and reach out to us if you need help, because you don't have to be alone.
100%.
Yeah. So, man, Josh, I appreciate this. This was great. Great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No worries. I love it. Yes.
Thanks.